Let's talk about the furry comic Beyond the Western Deep. Set in a grounded medieval world of swords and castles, we follow a semi-peaceful era that is poised on the edge of a knife between a handful of furry races. The first dozen or so pages of the comic outlines how pretty much every war they ever had was drawn on racial lines, and most of the bloodshed was the fault of the Canid tribe. The Canid are wolves. They have the biggest army, they like to conquer everything they see, and they're kinda jerks to everyone they come across. The Treaty of Sinaloa was eventually signed by all the races when they'd had their fill of blood, and everyone decided that distance was the only thing to keep the peace with. So every race went their separate ways, including the Canid, to their freshly conquered lands that used to belong to another race, the Ermin. There has been uneasy peace in the times since then, but the Ermin don't like living out in the wastelands, so they're beginning to band together to make war and kick the Canid out of their homelands. Unfortunately, because of the Treaty of Sinaloa, if anyone attacks the Canid for any reason, others are required to send aid, even if the Canid themselves are at fault for it. Get ready for a Game of Thrones level playing field of political intrigue, backstabbing, well-meaning diplomats, and bloody war. This is Beyond the Western Deep. There's no magic or anything here. This world is ruled by blade and fist and whoever brings the most guys to the battlefield. In it, we meet our main character, Captain Quinn. Quinn is a squirrel, trained in the arts of Tesk. Tesk is basically squirrel karate. Don't laugh, it's very serious. Squirrel karate. Complete with its own tenets for combat and philosophy, Tesk leads Quinn to be a skilled warrior, though his naive sensibilities often get him hurt anyway when the chips are down. He's young and still wants to believe that everyone else can be good, rational, play fair, etc. And the real world isn't like that, sorry. 2 weeks fresh from the death of his grandfather, he feels guilty as he became a scout up in the trees and not a respected soldier on the ground like his grandfather before him. Anyway, the joint rulers of the Western Deep, that is the woods where the squirrels live, have been informed about the escalating tensions between the Ermin and the Canid tribes. War is all but inevitable, so Quinn is sent with 2 others as a diplomatic envoy to hopefully tell everybody to calm the hell down instead of killing each other. But the Canid tribe is really good at killing things, and the Ermin tribe is just too angry about being kicked out of their homelands during wartime. Thusly begins the Third World War of their history. Treaties are being called in, garrisons are being attacked, assassinations are happening. It is absolute chaos, and it's only going to get worse as word gets out that the Canid are back to their bloody ways, provoking everyone around them. If anyone steps out of line, they just rub the Treaty of Sinaloa in their face and tell them to back off, and it actually works. Everyone's paws are politically tied while they slaughter the Ermin again, and the Ermin attack wherever and whenever they can from the wastelands. It is a lopsided, bitter conflict, and there is no end in sight. Okay, I don't want to tell you any more about the plot. It's just that good, trust me. Beyond the Western Deep is actually pretty staggering with its world building, invoking names, places, historical events, treaties, house names, locations, seen and not seen, and more. It can actually be pretty overwhelming. Like, no joke, I brought pencil and paper because I was not gonna remember who was who and where and when. This is a living, breathing world, and aside from the opening text crawl at the beginning, we do not have a single lore dump in the entire comic. This is a good thing, in this bird's opinion, but it is a lot. You need to remember all these names and details because there will be a test if you're going to grasp all the big reveals and plot points as they happen. Did I talk about the artwork yet? Well, it's excellent. Even looking at the backgrounds, the comic can be colorful, moody, dramatic, even storybook-like when it wants to be. There are entire sub-chapters, some of them as little as 10 pages long, devoted just to world building. Myths and legends and even characters that have nothing to do with anything are given the spotlight. But all of it contributes to a phenomenal tapestry that will make you learn about and understand this world, and it's just breathtaking. I love it. Now, you guys know me, I am extra harsh when it comes to medieval fantasy comics. It's very hard to impress me because I've read all of the big fantasy novels. I've watched all the big shows, etc., etc. You gotta bring the heat in the story department and in the world building department if you're gonna impress anybody, especially me with a swords and sorcery or medieval setting. Bog standard Germanic architecture in the villages? No, not there. Stopping to explain your magic system with an essay? No, not there. There's no magic in this world. Impractical armor to show off all the curves and stuff on our female leads? None. This is a grounded, harsh, and realistic medieval setting. This comic takes itself very seriously. There's no magic, there's no fan service or nudity, there's no hand-holding. Without being explicit or graphic, it is an adult story that treats its reader like an adult. Actions have consequences. The political intrigue runs back generations, and you better keep track of it all if you want to keep up. You're a grown-up. Bring pencil and paper. You're gonna need it. Beyond the Western Deep will not hold your hand. It will not cater to the lowest common denominator, and it will not bend the rules to the other harmless, fun swords and sorcery comics. I was floored with the grounded setting, the characters acting like actual people, the realistic political landscape and moral compasses of everyone involved. It's all just so impressive. I could hardly believe what I was reading. This is a very carefully crafted, very well-drawn art piece. If you want to make a furry comic or even a swords and sorcery comic, you should read this first because this is how it's done. This comic is smart, dramatic, political, violent, and it's not scared to kill off characters that do or do not deserve to die. I couldn't predict how any of the plot points went, which was great, and I was blown away at the steadily increasing flair of the art in some of the side stories. Now, all that being said, no comic is perfect, so I do need to bring forth the one problem that this comic has. It's probably getting to be way too popular, and the artists are branching out into other things that have to do with the comic, but not the comic itself. All in all, in the past 2 years, as of the making of this video, Beyond the Western Deep has only published between 10 and 15 comic pages. It has basically fallen dormant. The creators, on the other hand, are making physical copies of the comic. They're also publishing Beyond the Western Deep music tracks, trying their hand at making a video game, publishing text-only side stories, and more. Meanwhile, the comic itself sits gathering dust. I mean, don't get me wrong, absolutely publish and make that money, they deserve it, but 10 or 15 pages in 2 years? Yikes. if you're going to that many conventions and juggling that many side projects, at least put out 1 page per month so we know the comic isn't completely dead, you know? Okay, ramble over. I'm sorry, I know. Anyway, with all of its blood, political intrigue, excellent art, fantastic characters, and hundreds of pages of lore and side stories, should you read Beyond the Western Deep? Absolutely yes. This is how comics are done. Great artwork, great storytelling, great characters, a fully realized medieval world, the likes of which I have never seen before in a furry comic. This is just about perfect. I have no complaints about this comic in any capacity. It is a phenomenal reading experience. It left me wanting more, and I can't wait to see where the story goes as soon as the creators remember that they need to update it now and again. Anyways, yes, read it. It's amazing. And most of all, check it out.